All right, Baxter, I'm going to paint a picture for you, all right?
We're painting a picture.
So you're out with some buddies and you're camping. You're out with a bunch of...
no! How is this possibly going to go?
You're out with a bunch of buxom blonde ladies and you're all camping and...
A couple of brunettes this time. Why not?
You know what? You're out with a bunch of buxom brunettes and one blonde and one redhead because somebody's got to be the feisty, fiery redheaded one.
Feisty, fiery.
Yeah, so you're out, you're camping in the woods and you're having a good time, and then you hear in the middle of the night, you just hear, hee hee hee. And you go, what the Sam hell is that? You're looking around and you're like, hoo hee hee. You're like, what the hell is going on? You look over and at the side of camp, there's this little tiny ass dude, little itty bitty dude, about like 2 foot nothing. He's got a big bushy white beard, a little red pointy hat, a big old nose, and he's little hands and feet. He's wearing overalls and more like lederhosen, big wooden shoes. And he looks at you and goes, hee hee, hi there, my name is Randy.
You just can't leave me alone.
Yeah. He goes, hi, my name is Randy. And you go, Randy? He goes, yeah, Randy.
No,
you go, that's not a very magical, weird creature-like name.
Magical at all.
No, and he goes, shut up. It's my name, man. My name's Randy. What's your name? And you say, my name's Howard. And he says, that's kind of a stupid name for an idiot like you. And you go to punch this guy, and that's when you get jumped by like 60 other little tiny dudes with beards and big red pointy hats. They're beating the absolute piss out of you on the ground, just beating you up, spitting on you, kicking you, smacking you in the face with
pickaxes
their beards. You got the pickaxes. You're hitting you, and you die. They mine you for your bones. Take it back to the Feywilds and trade it for trinkets.
And then I turn right
gems.
around and I squash all of them like this.
Baxter,
Squash them down.
You can't squash them down if you're already dead and mined for your bones.
Yeah, but how many times could this even happen? So clearly I'm a demigod, and I keep coming alive again.
Yep, you got a lot of lives,
and I could just squish them all because gnomes suck anyway. Gnomes are crap.
Yep, gnomes. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah,
gnomes.
we're talking about gnomes.
Gnomes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Know Thy Enemy podcast. And if you're joining us for the first time, please take a couple seconds and like the video, hit the subscribe button, and share the video as well. And if you're joining us again, hello and welcome back. I'm Howard T. Baxter of Completely Unbiased News. I'm the host of Know Thy Enemy, and joining us again today, as always, the good and honest and cool and big-bearded, the General.
I wish you got a big peepee.
No, we're redoing that. No, we're good. Whatever. I don't think that's one of the keywords that'll get you ripped off.
I don't think peepee is going to get you knocked off YouTube. If it is, anyway, we're screwed.
So General,
yes.
Today, what are we talking about?
Talking about gnomes.
We're talking about gnomes.
Gnomes.
Those little annoying little things that are everywhere.
Lawns all over the place.
Put them in the lawns. Put them in the house. And I have a conspiracy theory.
Well, let's start with that, because you're way more passionate about this than I am. Lay it on me there, brother, man.
So the gnomes, you know how they're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're in the stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're in people's houses.
Yeah.
They're in the gardens. There's different versions of them. Some have weapons, guns, pickaxes. Some of them are zombies.
There's one right down the road from us that has 2 crossed AR-15s, actually.
I've seen those.
I'm sorry, not this road. Our old house, our previous house. Down at the end of the road, there was that yellow house that has all the
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, the F. Biden flag on it and everything. It has a gnome out front with the 2 crossed AR-15s.
I've seen that on Amazon.
Yeah.
I've also seen them getting eaten by Bigfoots and dinosaurs. But anyways, besides the point. So,
yeah.
The gnomes are everywhere. You want to know why the gnomes are everywhere?
Why, oh, why are the gnomes everywhere, Baxter?
Because they're taking over the world.
Now, are you saying this as in that the little lawn statues are a way to distract us and downplay the existence of gnomes so they're taking over like a shadow government? Or have they taken over so supremely that these gnome statues are like statues of like endearment and like ways to memorialize them?
They're not okay. So the gnomes aren't taking over in terms of metaphor or in terms of like a fad. They're actual gnomes. They're real. They're alive. The little statues, they come alive at night. And this is how they do it. This is how they sneak in. Okay? Do you follow? Do you follow this?
You heard it here first, folks.
The gnomes are alive.
The deep state is garden ornaments.
It's garden ornaments. Exactly. Maybe
They'll get you.
Maybe not deep state stuff or even, aliens or whatever, but it's the gnomes taking over. That's just a completely unbiased news theory that I have.
The New World Order. It's all lawn ornaments with red pointy hats and Abe Lincoln
They look
beards.
kind of like dwarves, but I guess we'll figure out a distinction later on. So anyway, that was fun. All right, so
I'm sold, man. I'll buy it.
I don't see why not. And later on, if you stick around, we're going to talk about gnomes during the Monster War and the impact that they had, if any. So stick around for that later on. All right, so now.
Yeah.
So the history
of gnomes. So gnomes, it's a mythological creature that kind of gained traction in like the Renaissance era in a lot of alchemical books, believe it or not, rather than literature and folklore. They were more of an alchemical
You mean like alchemy?
Alchemy, yeah. It's dude, buckle up. This ride is weird, kind of disappointing, and nowhere near what you think it's going to be.
And my conspiracy theory wasn't weird enough.
The reality is kind of weirder than that conspiracy theory, honestly.
Oh, fair enough. Let's hear it. Okay, so
everything you think about, take a second, just freeze frame yourself right now in your thought as to what you think the history of gnomes in folklore and history is right now. I'll give you a few seconds to ruminate on that. I'll give you 3 seconds. 2, 1. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong, because I had an idea, and it was wrong, too.
Actually, yeah, you want me to... I could tell you what I thought gnomes were before whatever you're about to say.
Lay it on me.
I have a little bit of an idea. Okay, so I thought gnomes originally were just little garden gnomes. They're just hanging around in the garden. And you buy them.
Like little spirits almost?
Like trinkets, kind of. Yeah, like a little, it's a little statue type of thing. Would you say spirit?
Yeah, it's almost like a
like a little spirit kind of thing, or like some kind of magical little creature, like a fairy or a dwarf of some kind. That's about it. Yeah.
Nope.
The truth is much weirder.
Nope. The truth is they're entirely a literature creation. There is no gnomes in folklore.
Okay, so maybe we need a distinction between folklore and literature, because I thought folklore was literature.
Folklore is mythological tradition, like
passed orally.
Sort of like so folklore is more oral tradition, more like stories, folk wisdom, urban legends, stuff like that. It's like, literature is stories. Literature is actual books. Mm-hmm. That like fiction or nonfiction. Folklore is more of the person-to-person oral tradition. So legends. Folklore is more legends and myths,
and more of perhaps even like cultural significance.
Yes.
Whereas until paper and pens and things were invented.
Correct.
Because that's how you would pass everything down. It'd be orally.
Yes.
Or scratch it on a cave or something. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
So much like orcs in our last episode, gnomes are almost entirely a creation of literature. Actually, more so, because whereas orcs were kind of like a word that could be thrown back and forth to mean like goblin or like an evil spirit or something like that, gnome didn't really show up in the broad scheme of things until like the Renaissance, and people started trying to turn cat piss into gold with alchemy and stuff like that. Like gnomes were mentioned as spirits to show up in that. Like here, I could just get into it here. Gnome, it's a mythological creature, diminutive spirit in Renaissance magic and alchemy. First introduced by Paracelsus in the 16th century, so the 1500s, and later adopted by authors, including those of modern fantasy literature. They're seen as small, diminutive, usually live underground, big bushy beards, oftentimes big pointy hat, all that jazz. But basically, they are more famous for the statues in front of people's houses.
Exactly. They're digging tunnels under the ground and they're taking over the world.
Than their actual literature impact. They are more part of the modern lexicon and zeitgeist for just being lawn ornaments than their actual cultural impact.
Okay,
It's
so
fascinating that
so
these
gnomes
things...
are actually more modern.
Very much so, yes.
More of a modern.
So the word comes from Renaissance Latin, gnomus,
It's always Latin.
gnomus, which appears in a book of nymphs, sylphs, pygmies, and salamanders, and on the other spirits by Paracelsus, published posthumously in Nisa in 1566, and again in the Johannes Huser edition of 1589 through 1591 from an autograph by Paracelsus. So the term may have been an original invention by this dude, possibly deriving the term from the Latin genomus, itself representing a Greek word approximately gnomos, literally earth dweller. That maybe he just kind of dropped the E out of it and just created nomos to be like a truncated version of that. So the widely held idea is that this dude just made them up.
Was this dude Italian?
This dude was something. I believe he was Italian, yes. It does appear he was Italian, yes.
Okay, just because it seems that most of the famous stuff out of the Renaissance came from Italy.
Yes, yeah.
For some reason.
Big guy in the Renaissance magic scene, basically. Yeah, in Italy.
That's interesting. I wonder why Italy specifically.
Actually, Italy specifically because of the cultural significance that the Romans played to the area.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yes, that makes sense.
So there was a lot of... The Enlightenment kind of hit there hard in the Mediterranean. And it wasn't just in Italy. It was also in Germany. It was a lot of the big city centers where things just started getting a little more cool, a little more groovy, a little less authoritarian, and the church started having a little bit less of a hold on the area where people were able to, wash their hands.
Well, part of the Renaissance coming about, or perhaps, before that was the Enlightenment, yeah?
The Enlightenment was the direct start of the, the Enlightenment is kind of terminology for...
Well,
like the start of the pre-modern era, but yes, there was an Enlightenment that led us from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance, more or less.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
And so what I was getting at was the invention of the press.
The printing press did play a big part in that, but that actually happened later on into the Renaissance. That was what led people to be able to understand common-held scientific and religious thought in a larger bandwidth than just from what smart people or church people were telling them.
It allowed... Well, that's why that, that kind of comes into play, because...
Yes, absolutely.
Because it allowed for learning.
Yep, you are
literally.
Absolutely 100% correct.
Which... Right. At that point, then, then you get wars.
Yeah.
But anyway...
But yeah, so basically the modern spelling, the omission of the E is referred to as a blunder by the Oxford English Dictionary. So basically, when the E in genomos instead of genomos, now it's nomos, and then gnome comes from that.
Well, the K is silent.
It's a G.
Or yes, that's exactly what I meant. G. Well, I guess gnome, like known.
Yeah,
I sort of in my head.
I know where you were coming from, though. That was really funny.
The K is silent.
Paracelsus uses nomi as a synonym of a pygmy and classifies them as earth elementals in alchemical thought. He describes them as 2 spans high, was very reluctant to interact with humans, and able to move through solid earth as easily as humans move through air. So they basically just walk through solid stone and dirt instead of like digging and everything like in modern ideas. Like his idea was they just kind of phase through it. Like that was their home element where they could just kind of move through it.
This reminds me of a Star Trek episode. The original Star Trek. There was this thing, they didn't have much money making the show, so it looked like they just threw a carpet over somebody, and he just kind of walked like this. And this monster thing...
What do you walk like, Baxter?
Was just kind of like this, but with a carpet over you, just like a burlap sack. And so anyway, this thing
sounds like a good Saturday evening after
so
a bit of drinking there.
So this thing can walk through rock.
Yes.
Same idea as easily as people walk through air.
Yes.
And then at one point, Spock puts his hands on it in order to read it, and Spock goes, "Ah, pain." That was really funny.
Hell yeah.
Well, that was when Star Trek was good. But
Yes.
anyway, and that's as little of Star Trek as I've really seen. Anyway, that's the original series. This is the best one. Maybe not. I don't know. We're not talking about Star Trek. We're talking about gnomes.
Yes. So the way that gnomes, like the appearance of gnomes, like their visual appearance, was only ever described by this guy as just being short, basically. The whole idea of them having the beards and the funny hats and lederhosen and pointy shoes and stuff like that is basically just from them being an earth spirit. Their relation to the existing folklore examples of like German dwarves and things like that, where they were associated with them and so kind of gained properties from them as time went on. As the more people wrote about them, they wanted more descriptions of them.
Yeah, much like, well, even in this, right, so like you have, Grimm's.
Yes, yep.
Was more or less, was from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And same kind of, idea there, I guess. Pointy shoes and...
Yep, they just basically gained...
Yeah.
People gave them attributes from actual existing folklore instances in order to kind of juice the story up for gnomes and make them more interesting, rather than they're just short elementals. It's like, yeah, they're short elementals, but they got a white Abe Lincoln beard and pointy red hat and all that stuff, that they just took different things from different cultural aspects, and they oftentimes dress them up like Dutch people, weirdly enough.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
It seems there's a lot of Dutch influence as well.
Only visibly, because there is not a lot of Dutch...
Short people.
The Dutch aren't very short, Baxter.
No, they're not. The Dutch are actually very tall.
Yeah.
I was agreeing with you.
Oh, I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
No,
I thought you were,
What?
okay, I was confused. I thought you were just like, yeah, because the Dutch are tiny. I'm like, they're huge. Dutch people are gigantic.
Because you said there's not a lot of, and I said short people.
Gotcha.
Or short Dutch people or something like that.
I gotcha.
No,
Okay.
people in the Netherlands
I feel
are
you now.
extremely tall, extremely beautiful women.
So, the chthonic or earth-dwelling spirit has precedence in numerous ancient and medieval mythologies, often guarding mines and precious underground treasures. That's the Germanic dwarves. And the Greek... I'm not going to try and pronounce that. There's Greek spirits that are similar to dwarves. The gnomes that grew into Swiss folklore from that basically were... said to have caused a landslide that destroyed the Swiss village of Pleurs in 1618. So that goes to show that it took up to like the 1600s for them to gain an actual real, albeit minimal, foothold in any sort of existing folklore. They existed almost entirely in written literature.
Okay, yeah, as written literature, and then eventually in popularity,
Yes.
became folklore.
They became-
when it spread throughout
Yep.
Europe, and you get the Dutch influence, and the sort of Grimm's fairy tales probably had an impact. I don't even know actually. We're a little bit sidetracked here, but we're the Grimm's. I did a little snort there. You're probably gonna hear it in the audio. Yeah, anyway. The Grimm's were not popular until later, right?
Well, the Grimms are more like a black dog type thing.
Well, I'm talking about.
Like a church Grimm?
Oh, no. I'm talking about Grimm's fairy tales. The actual...
The Grimms.
Grimms, the brothers Grimm.
I thought you meant like it's a folklore thing, and I'm like, that's a freaking dog, man. Okay, I got what you're saying.
No, I've been saying the Grimms. Is it the Grimms?
The Grimms are two M's. Two M's. I got you. I feel you, dog. That was my bad. But yeah,
I've been saying the Grimm. Okay, what do you think I meant all this time? I was saying the
thought you were just
Grimms.
talking about like the existence of the church Grimm coming from like German culture, which they are a direct descendant
Sure, yeah,
of
but no,
Germanic
I was talking about the
culture.
Grimms, like Grimm's fairy
Okay.
tales.
That is interesting how those two lines of thoughts were running parallel to each other.
And
I
it
was
worked.
following one and you were saying the other, and I totally missed it. Okay, so Grimm with two M's, the dudes.
But obviously the
Gotcha.
Grimms came later.
Yes.
It was not obviously during the Renaissance.
Correct.
But what the point was is that eventually, because there probably was some influence from them.
I want to say the Grimms were the late 1600s,
think-
weren't they?
It's not Victorian?
I'm going to look that up right now because I am so curious.
I don't think they were. I think it may have been the Victorian era. I'm not really sure. Because I'm thinking of the Snow White and Seven Dwarfs influence.
Oh,
perhaps.
you are absolutely right. Okay, the Grimm's
1812.
Fairy Tales was published in 1812, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but was that all the Grimms?
Yes, I do believe so.
They just released it in one volume and that was it?
There were several volumes. That was the earliest one, and it went
Okay,
all the way up through. It just said 1857 was the last one.
Okay, and so that eventually, I know it was 200 years later.
Yes.
From that eventually may have had some impact. I don't know. We're all guessing.
They came into pop culture of the time.
We're probably it probably is safe to assume.
Yes,
they had an influence.
Safe to assume they had a huge influence in it.
We should do an entire episode on the Grimms at some point.
That would be a great subject. Actually.
Great subject.
Let us know in the comments if you want to see that.
Do you want to see an episode on the Grimms?
I know you do. And I know you're watching.
We want to do it, so we're going to do it anyway. Right now.
But let's see.
What are we talking about? Okay, so by this time, we've reached no longer just literature, but it is starting to become folklore, based on perhaps this one guy in Italy eating pizza.
Well, that is the one. That is the one instance of anything that I have that involves folklore. That is the one time folklore was used in this entire freaking rap sheet. Here.
Okay, so
the rest is literature.
So we've come from literature to perhaps we're in the folklore time. So that was it.
Yep, I think that they progressed into the folklore of the time through the existence of relevant pop culture of the time. Basically, they were in the popular thought, and so they became part of folklore. People kind of like retroactively shoved them into
like it was kind of adopted, legend. Perhaps. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. But as you're going to see here, they are much more popular in literature. So the English word is attested from the early 18th century. Gnomes are used in one of Alexander Pope's works.
Yeah.
That basically they are small celestial creatures that were prudish women in their past lives and act as guardians of prudish women in the quote-unquote modern time. So it's funny because they're seen as these little dudes with big beards, but they were women that didn't want to do hanky-panky in their past lives. And so they don't have the beards in Alexander Pope's work.
Wait. So this in this particular works, this is karma?
Maybe.
Or okay,
it's incredibly vague, dude.
So these gnomes are different than the gnomes that we know.
These gnomes are very different. Yes, this is just a use of gnome, basically.
These were gnomes that didn't want to be promiscuous, or women didn't want to be promiscuous, became gnomes.
They basically were non-promiscuous women that died and came back as a guardian angel of sorts for modern prudish women.
Oh, okay. So they kind of became like guardians. Were
Yeah.
there statues at this point, or was this just so there were statues at this point?
Maybe.
Oh, we don't even know.
I don't even know. Again, like I said, gnomes have had so little.
All right. Well, yeah.
Such a small impact on history. Apparently,
we briefly
crazy.
had a conversation about this. General, you remember we were briefly talking about it because we were trying to come up with subjects for episodes, and I said I mentioned that I think gnomes probably came from Denmark or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I was so excited to look into it, and then we both kind of deflated after we read it. We were like, oh.
Do you have that information? We can do that because right now.
From them being from Denmark?
Yeah. What was the result? What was the information you found? So they're right. So you didn't find anything.
Nope. They have very little, if any, relation to Denmark. They're just dressed as like the lawn ornaments are dressed as what Americans think that Europeans look like, basically. Like they put them in the lederhosen and the clogs and stuff like that, little pointy hats.
Oh, okay, so
the average Central European peasant look, sort of speaking.
So so the gnomes, as we know them as statues, possibly is an American thing.
It's more Americanized. It is sort of a global thing. They gained a lot of popularity in the U.S. as a really weird I think it was the 50s where they took off. I actually have that info here. Let me see.
Oh yeah, I mean, I that was just sort of a side note from where we were at before.
Yeah, actually, let's stick a pin in that for a second because
Yeah,
it will
we'll
come
go
up
back
in
to that. We'll
in
go
like
back to
5
that.
minutes here. So gnomes, they show up in let's see. Nomide is a term for female gnomes, or nomid in English translations. Gnomes is also a term for female gnome. Fun fact I had in there. Basically, Nathaniel Hawthorne in Twice Told Tales from 1837 says that they could be small enough to be the king of fairies and ugly enough to be the king of the gnomes. Which, okay. Let's see. Similarity, gnomes are contrasted to elves in William Cullen Bryant's Little People of the Snow, which has "Let us have a tale of elves that ride by night with jingling reins, or gnomes by the mine." So basically, gnomes are seen more as the ground folk, whereas elves are more the up on the surface folk in those. Russian composer Mussorgsky produced a movement in his work.
Oh, is this Tchaikovsky, the
No, this
Nutcracker Fall?
is Mogorsky.
Oh, Mugorsky.
Yeah, Gnomes from 1874 is a movement in his work Pictures at an exhibition. It's written to sound as if a gnome is moving about, which we'll have to look that up because that's actually interesting to.
What would that sound like?
We'll have to look that up at the end here because that's actually very fascinating to think of. Franz Hartmann in 1895 satirized materialism in showing that gnomes are very materialistic and they're after gold and stuff like that.
Sounds an awful lot like dwarves.
Gnomes are more present in modern literature than in ancient literature. They came up after a lot of the more modern fantasy work that spawned from Tolkien's work. They are used as another race of fantastical beings because authors are always looking for new and fun stuff to throw in. They're seen as just short, little maniacal tricksters that love gold. They got big noses, and they like to tinker on stuff. They like to tinker with stuff and build toys and stuff like that. They're seen almost as like the elves that that help the shoemaker in that one legend, rather than like dwarves in the modern.
I was about to say, yeah, like it's the Well, what is that? Well, that's mice, though. Well, that's a Beatrix Potter one, I think. There's has nothing to do with gnomes anymore now that I'm thinking about it, but it's basically, yeah, so there's the shopkeeper guy, and he has he has the cat. There's the cat. And it goes out at night. Does this ring a bell at all? Okay. Well, it doesn't involve gnomes anyway, so never mind. They were mice. Mice come out and make all the stuff, and everything is saved.
Oh, gotcha. No, I was talking about like the German. I think it's German or Dutch folklore tale where it was just some guy at night. Basically, he was an old.
So it's kind of the same idea.
Old struggling cobbler that couldn't make his shoes anymore.
Yeah,
so
you
yeah,
just
same
get rid of the mice and whatever, and you throw in the gnomes.
Yeah,
wow, well, down my mind. A lot of cross-pollination here.
Ooh, let's see. J.R.R. Tolkien in the Legendarium, created in 1914 to 1973, surrounding his elves, uses gnomes as the, gnomes as the initial but later dropped name of the Noldor.
Huh.
So he initially used gnomes instead of the Noldor. That's actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
So that might have taken some buildup of gnomes in pop culture as well. Tolkien has so big a thumbprint on the modern pop culture understanding of like creatures and fantasy. It's
100%.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, they're in Dungeons and Dragons. They are a race that you can play. They're small, diminutive. They have big noses, and they love to tinker with stuff. And they are lucky. So if you roll for any sort of a skill or anything, you get to roll twice, and the better of the two is the one you get to, or if you fail, you get to roll a second time, or something like that. It's that luck aspect where basically their chances of succeeding in small tasks is greatly increased because they're kind of useless otherwise.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So it really is. Gnomes are well. Okay. So they're good luck.
They are lucky, not good luck. They're
Okay.
lucky.
So when did lucky come into this whole thing?
Just in how they were set up in friggin' Dungeons and Dragons. That's just an aspect they gave to them. Because they could be seen as a good luck charm and stuff, especially with these.
Right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Then why are they in the garden? Why do they? Are they protectors or they're just lucky?
Well, they are seen as. Here we go.
Perhaps they're just lucky. We don't know.
Actually, I got it right here. After World War II. Wait, is there more to that one? Nope,
We don't know.
After World War II, with early references and ironic use from the late 1930s, the diminutive figurines introduced as lawn ornaments during the 19th century, from the Victorian times, people would make little gnome statues as just like kind of a funny thing because they were guardians of the earth, and so they were seen as protecting the garden, little garden spirits. They'd put them out there as good luck for their garden, that their garden would grow. It was like a garden guardian.
All right, okay, well, that answers that question.
But they became more popular in the U.S. with the 1960s and 1970s, with the image changing to be more of the stereotypical what they look like now, where it's the exaggerated. Sometimes you don't see the eyes, the big nose, big bulbous nose, and the big beard and everything.
Yeah, right,
and
exactly.
that became more popular in the 60s and the 70s, when the first plastic garden gnomes were manufactured. These gnomes followed in the style of the 1937 description of the Seven Dwarves in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves by Disney. So that's why they look the way they do.
There you go. There's the connection.
Yep. This Disney-fied image of the gnome was built upon by the illustrated children's classic The Secret Book of Gnomes from 1976. The original Dutch Leven en Werken van de Kabouter, apologies, garden gnomes share a resemblance to the Scandinavian Tomte and Nisse, and the Swedish term tomte can be translated as gnome in English. So there you go.
Well, so there's the Scandinavian connection.
Yep. So basically, gnomes are a conglomeration of a bunch of different folklore aspects that were kind of brought together into this mixed up soup of aspects that were kind of cherry-picked from different cultures and whatnot to create this thing that is a modern creature that we put out in our gardens now.
Right, and so to round back to the Denmark thing, that's it.
That's about it.
It's basically just from
Yep.
From what was it? Designs.
Yep, designs, and they basically just some books were written and stuff that they have about the same cultural impact on gnomes that the U.S. has. And basically, it was just the culture of the 60s and 70s. We're getting like tacky knickknacks. That was something that really exploded, and that's why they're so popular even into the modern day, because Grandma and Grandpa had one, so why shouldn't I?
Right, exactly. And then they don't really hold any kind of... I mean, people don't actually think they're spirits, at least. I don't think so.
Who knows?
Well, I'm just saying.
Some people
maybe they're more like a novelty or sort of a collector.
Yes, they are a novelty more than they are a folklore
like,
impact.
Oh, here's your Christmas gnome. Oh, here's a gnome getting eaten by a Bigfoot.
Correct.
You know, that type of thing, which I've almost bought a couple of those because...
I'm surprised you haven't.
Because it's fun. Well, we need money.
That's a great point, Baxter.
There's not a lot of money in completely unbiased news these days. So, I was thinking about this, but apparently there's not actually a connection. So, like in ancient Roman times, they had a god for everything. There was like a protector of your doorway, of your stove, of your bread. Or a protector or a guardian or a god or whatever.
Yeah, a protective god, yeah.
So, but it more or less, that's not the gnome. That was just sort of...
Nope.
Kind of a protector of the earth, I guess.
The gnome is entirely a fabrication of some dude writing a friggin' alchemical handbook.
Well, because so that turned out to be a lot of nothing, like we were talking about before, which was we think, what, aren't they guardians? Or like we were trying to figure it out.
Well, I thought that they were much more related
Spirits
to like
of the garden.
the Hildefolk from like Iceland and stuff like that.
That's what it was, yeah.
I thought that they were more related to like the Hildefolk and the Fae and stuff like that, but it turns out they really aren't. They're just kind of their own thing.
Yeah, they're not.
I was very surprised. Like I was legitimately kind of flabbergasted that there wasn't that much water to be held in this story.
Well, that's what we found out. It was there was some stuff there, but otherwise we were basically wrong, and
more or less, yeah.
they weren't the origin of it and what have you. And it's just more of a modern thing, turns out.
So as for the monster war, we didn't actually fight any gnomes because they are entirely a fabrication. But I can say that if you ever did come across a gnome, if they ever do turn out to be real, hoof them right in the chest. Kick them as hard as you can. You could probably punt a gnome like 30 yards if you really wanted to. They got the pointy hat. They're vaguely football shaped.
You're just holding back now. There definitely is some kind of gnome presence out there. I mean, for the audience that's stuck around,
Baxter, you shut the hell up right now.
There's got to be.
We don't talk about that.
What's that? Is my conspiracy true?
The what? We don't talk about the gnomish one world government that's trying to take over, Baxter.
Wait, so they've met with the monster council. I'm losing my voice.
All I can say.
Listen, gnome tried to poison me. That's what's
all
going
I
on.
can say is if you ever encounter a gnome, if you ever encounter a gnome, just hoof it right in the chest. Kick it as hard as you can, right center of mass. They got the pointy hat. They're kind of vaguely aerodynamic and football shaped. Get a good spiral on there. You can kick them about 30 yards, and they'll probably die.
So now that we know thy enemy, and is that how you defeat them? You just kick them.
God, I hope so.
I mean, because officially, if they're real.
Yeah, if they're real.
Okay, great. I had no idea they weren't real, I guess, but
not real at all.
But of course, gnomes can be very annoying. So
very annoying. Yeah. It's why they're all in everybody's.
We're in everybody's garden.
Everybody's garden. Yeah.
Everybody's garden.
I think that's a good spot to end this one, Baxter. I can't believe you brought that up.
How long have we been going?
I can't believe you brought
only
that
38
up.
minutes.
You brought up the freaking gnomes again. I told you.
What the gnomes?
You're gonna cut this out. I hope you know.
Okay. It's very possible.
Yeah, they're just lawn ornaments with not much folklore, and definitely,
right, yeah.
definitely not trying to take over the world.
Of
course not.
No, definitely, of course not. So apparently, the gnomes, it's kind of a disappointing origin story. They're mostly just a modern novelty, like modern statues to sell on Amazon.
Yeah.
Basically that, yeah.
So yeah, that's about all I got, Baxter.
That's it. Okay, so they're just a novelty, and they're just get them on Amazon, whatever.
Yep. So if you enjoyed this, you think you learned something about how little an impact gnomes actually have on modern history, and you're as disappointed as we are it turned out to be that little an impact, leave us a like. Let us know in the comments how you think we did, if you liked it, if you didn't. If you really think you learned something and we kept you from buying more stuff on Amazon for all of an hour or half an hour or however long this has been, maybe subscribe, because we can do that for you in the future. I know that with everything that's been going on the past couple years, things have been hard, and retail therapy has been a bit of a safety net to which we have all fallen into to try and safeguard our sanity. But you need your money for food, especially with prices going up. So subscribe to Gark House Productions, because we will keep you from buying knickknacks and doohickeys and thingamajigs on Amazon instead of the bananas and cereal and ground beef and eggs that you actually need to spend your money on.
You're not wrong, General. It costs you nothing to hit the subscribe button and the like button. It helps us defeat the evil algorithms and helps us get our videos out there. And we really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the subscribers that we do have.
Yep, we've been having a lot of fun doing this. We really love doing this for you guys. You guys seem to be enjoying this a lot. We're having a blast doing it. This is episode 8 now. Yeah,
this will be episode 8.
Episode 8.
The only podcast with a completely unbiased news reporter and a general who fought and survived in the monster war.
Hell yeah.
And
you're welcome, by the way.
You're
welcome.
Oh, 100%. Keeps all the monsters at bay.
Mm-hmm.
Keep all the monsters at bay.
These guns.
The Know Thy Enemy podcast. The only podcast where you will learn how to defend yourself, how to know thy enemy and how to defend yourself if you ever run across a skunk ape or a megalodon or a gnome, which
The black dog.
or the black dog.
Werewolves.
You'll know how to defend yourself against werewolves as well. Go check the backlog of episodes. We have a lot of fun.
Yep.
And there's a lot more coming.
We got a lot more in the pipe coming. We got infinite stuff to talk about. But if there is something specific you want us to cover that you want to learn about, let us know in the comments. We'll cover it.
100%.
Episode 2, our second episode, the skunk ape, was a request by a fan, and we want to do more stuff like that and make you guys happy. So let us know. And if you absolutely hate us, let us know that in the comments too, because that's engagement. And haha, screw you.
All right. We are out.
Yep. Bye.
All right, General.
Don't talk about gnomes.
All right, General. So, now I gotta turn off all these cameras.
Yeah. Get to it.
I think. Did you? Oh, by the way. Obviously, gnomes are real. You were just saying that for the cameras.
Dude, I can't believe you brought that up. Yes, they're real.
So gnomes are real.
You should be afraid.
Well, I just came up with this conspiracy.
Everywhere.
I just came up with this conspiracy on my own.
You hit the nail
You
on
didn't
the
say
head,
anything.
dude.
Well, you didn't have to say anything. Now I'm actually
Well, what
really
am I supposed to
terrified.
do? Just sit there and lie to them? Oh, no, they're not real. I tried.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you tried to pivot.
This is all pre-recorded.
We can fix it in editing. We don't have to have anything about the gnomes being real.
All right, fair enough.
The less people...
Well, no, then the whole episode should just be deleted.
Well, no, because it's a lot of good information, especially the hoofing them in the chest, because, if they do rise up, we got to have something for... Listen, okay, we could fix this in editing. All we got to do is just cut out the section where we talk about the one world government with gnomes. We could just get that out of there, get that out of the modern, get that out of the brain.
We'll take over all this crap tomorrow. I actually got to go to the restroom.
Please don't forget.
I got to go to the restroom really badly.
What? Dude, I'm a fat man, guy. I'm really close to the wall.
Jesus Christ.
Sometimes I hate you.
What's that?
Sometimes I hate you.